Salutations, greetings, peace be unto you. I said I was gonna come back and then just because I wanted to, but I got sick, and being sick hindered the production and the progression of the study. So for that, I apologize. Yeah, it's winter. I'm in my dressing gown. I'm I'm not like 100% better. I'm like 95, 96%. But I had the energy to start going again. So we're gonna keep going again. We're gonna pick up from where we left off last time. Genesis 35, where Jacob officially becomes Israel. So first we see Jacob is called to Bethel. God visits Jacob and tells him to go back to Bethel, the place where God first encountered Jacob. This is also the place where he rested when fleeing from Esau. It's such a pivotal moment in Jacob's life because this is where things started and this is where things are going to end. God is bringing his life full circle. God is bringing his life full circle, and now it's time for him to take off the old and put on the new. God called him there specifically to make an altar as an act of remembrance to show Jacob that this is where the trajectory of your life changed, and how you mark that is with an altar. God intentionally brought Jacob back there so he could see the altar and remember this. And now a new chapter begins in Jacob's life. This is him actually stepping in and stepping up because Isaac is about to die, which means the torch has to be passed down to him. It's time for Jacob to take his place as Israel, the head of God's holy tribe for the sake of the covenant. Genesis 35 verses 2-3. And Jacob said unto his household and to all that were with him, put away the strange gods that are among you, and be clean, and change your garments, and let us arise and go up to Bethel, and I will make there an altar unto God, who answered me in the day of my distress, and was with me in the way which I went. When Jacob said this, I was instantly taken back to Exodus 19, when God tells Moses to tell the Israelites they were going to meet him, and that they must cleanse themselves before the encounter, which was essentially God saying, before you come to face to face with me, get yourselves right. Come to me with the right posture and have some respect. They couldn't face God with their dirty selves. They had to put some things away. Yes, Jacob was talking literally when he said remove the strange gods, the idols, but we all know the point. At this point, idols can be spiritual and they can be symbolic. When you come before God, there are some things that you're going to have to simply put aside, such as pride, anger, and arrogance, because they are simply not going to fly with God. This is the other reason God told Moses to take off his sandals. Yes, it's symbolic of sacrificing who you are, who you can become, but not just in regards to faith, but also the flaws of humanity. Moses was an angry man. He had a lot of built up anger. Some would even say pride. And he was filled with fear also. All these things had the potential to hinder him and stop his life becoming what it became if he didn't learn to put these things aside. Genesis 34 verse 5. And they gave unto Jacob all the strange gods which were in their hand, and all their earrings which were in their ears, and Jacob hid them under the oak which was by Shechem. I didn't want to move on before touching on this because it's rather important. Jacob made all those that were with him, which may have included those who aren't a part of his family. Otherwise, why did the writers of the text decide to add this here? Could these idols and substances be what they stole from the Hivites? There's definitely potential in this case, and with that said, let's not overlook the second object Jacob made them give to him, which was their earrings. That should sound incredibly familiar to us all, because that's how the golden calf was made, which has caused some to believe that the earrings were seen as talisman. For those who are unsure of what talisman is, it's an engraved object, most commonly a piece of jewelry, that is believed to hold magical powers. The occultists used different talismans to channel the power of different planets, stars, and other hosts of heaven. Different metals, stones, and symbols were associated with different hosts. We even see this play out not just in Exodus, but also in Kings. When Solomon turned from God, he pioneered witchcraft and worshipped Saturn, aka Moloch, Baal, Nimrod. It's believed that most of the talisman the occults use today were Solomon's handiwork. And when you put it into perspective, it holds weight. Because if we look back to when the golden calf was made, the Israelites said, "We don't want what has become of him." They turned their backs on Moses. And not only him, but more importantly, God. They didn't want the promises of God, so they turned to something else. Apis, the Egyptian god of fertility, Pharaoh's power and agriculture. They wanted what that idol had to offer instead. Since that slave mentality still plagued them, which means they had to get a hold of this god in some form or another. And what better way to do that than to use the earrings as talisman to worship that idol in order to receive what it had to offer? And it just so happened to be that gold was the metal associated with the idol, because Apis was illustrated as a golden calf. Jacob makes it to Luz. As Jacob and his family make their way to Bethel, God puts his fear on the surrounding cities, because after what happened with the Hivites, it's only expected that the other nations would come after them for revenge, but God let his fear rest on those nations, which gave Jacob divine favor as he made his way to Bethel, because God needed him there, so much so that God got involved and made a way. Let this be a reminder. Let it be a reminder to all of us that God will put us where he needs us to be and will make the way for us. Genesis 35 verse 7. And he built there an altar and called the place El Bethel, because there God appeared unto him when he fled from the face of his brother. The name El Bethel only shows up twice in the Bible. The first is when God got a hold of Jacob, and the second is here, when God instructed Jacob to go back. It goes to show that Jacob's life is about to come full cycle. This is God getting Jacob back to his roots, and a good way to do that is to physically see the pillar Jacob set up, because it was meant for remembrance, because when Jacob saw that pillar, that was God making him remember the person he once was, the conversation and the agreement he made with God, and most importantly, all that God had done for him. God made Jacob a promise, and Jacob stayed faithful to what God said, and now because of that, things are coming to pass. Now is Jacob going to become Israel, the head of God's holy tribe. But before that, Rebekah's nurse dies. Genesis 35 verse 8. But Deborah, Rebekah's nurse, died. She was buried beneath Bethel under an oak, and the name of it was called Allon Bachath. There's one thing about this passage that I struggled with. I struggled to get my head around this. Is that why was Deborah's corpse treated in the same manner in which they treated the idols? Well, let's break this down. First of all, we know that Deborah has been with Jacob and his family the whole time, because when Jacob left Haran, we know he took everything with him and left. Secondly, the name Allon Bachath translates to oak of weeping or tree of weeping. When I first read this, I couldn't get my head around the fact Deborah and the idols were treated in the same way, but it turns out that there's nothing here that connects the two. Because in verse 4, the Hebrew translation for oak tree is Elah. In this verse, the Hebrew for oak tree is Ha'alon. There are two different contexts and two different words. But if they're going to name the place Oak of Weeping, then Deborah must have held a special place in their hearts. I've only just noticed that Deborah wasn't a maid, she was a nurse. She wasn't Rebekah's nurse, meaning she's known Rebekah all her life. And according to the Hebrew, her name means formalizer. And I'll be honest with you, I never heard of that word up until this moment in time. But according to the dictionary, it means to validate as well as to give a definite form. It signifies her nurturing nature and just how much she cared for Rebekah. God establishes the covenant with Israel. I think it just goes to show that you can never have things right. You can never have things perfect. I think that's a good way of putting it. You can never have things perfect. Things can go great. But every single time something goes great, something bad happens. Because that's just life. You can't have it perfect and right all the time. Something to think about. So at this moment in time, God appears to Jacob again in Paddan Aram and changes his name to Israel. But God repeats the promise that he gave to Abraham. He reminds Israel of who he is and tells him to be fruitful and multiply, as well as reminding him that he's going to give him the land that was promised to Abraham. This is God showing Israel that he doesn't forget. Because of the name change, alongside everything that's about to happen, such as Isaac's death, it's time for Israel to step up and take his father's place, which is why God is repeating himself here, because he is re-establishing the covenant. But not Jacob, the person he used to be, but Israel, the person he was destined to become. After that conversation, God departs with Jacob, and Israel sets up another pillar, poured a drink offering, and anointed it with oil, which is similar to what he did the first time around. This is the start of a new season for Jacob, and sometimes the most blessed and fruitful seasons have terrible beginnings. For example, he just lost 3 people close to him: his wife, her nurse, and his father. But he will continue to prevail. To keep things simple, things have become chaotic, and why did God allow all this to happen? To that we can only say that God's timing is nothing compared to our timing, and that intimacy with God is built through struggle and hardship. Things may be taking a left turn here, but in the midst of chaos, God has given Jacob a word, a promise, and even though what's going on around him seems contrary to that promise, it helps Jacob increase in faith. When we're given a promise from God, do we have the faith to hold on even when things seem contrary to what God has said? After the pillar is built, he changes the name to Bethel, which is rather odd because it's always been Bethel, has it not? El Bethel and Bethel are technically the same thing. House of God. It's an interesting name though. The house of God. It's interesting because we know God doesn't dwell in the temple made of hands, but he does inhabit the praises of his people. It's a beautiful way Jacob signified the intimacy with himself, not just as a person, but a nation with God. And then Rachel dies. As they continue on their travels, Rachel takes a bad turn because she's heavily pregnant. The Bible uses the term hard labor, which tells us it was a difficult and painful birth. Genesis 35 verses 17 to 20. And it came to pass, as her soul was in departing, that she called his name Ben-Oni, but his father called him Benjamin. And Rachel died and was buried in the way to Ephrath, which is in Bethlehem. And Jacob set up a pillar upon her grave, that is the pillar of Rachel's grave unto this day. I'm thinking about that. It's a rather graphic way to put it. Her soul was in departing. As her son was leaving her womb, she was dying. As her son was receiving life, she was losing hers. The name Ben-Oni translates to son of my strength and sorrow, whereas Benjamin translates to son of the right hand. It's a lovely way of illustrating that you're not defined by pain or circumstances, but by God, for we know what right hand is referring to. It's pointing toward righteousness, holiness, and intimacy. Whereas compared to Ben-Oni, it seems to lack and focus more on the pain. Benjamin also translates to son of the south. And right now, they are in Ephrath, which is south of Bethlehem, which gives his name another dimension of perspective when it comes to its meaning, and that he is a son of the house of God. It's a beautiful way of reflecting on God's promises, character, and the journey that's been taken with God and man. Benjamin is a product of that. After they continue there, Reuben does something rather foolish, but also dangerous. He sleeps with Bilhah, his father's concubine. We're not given the reason as to why he did this or any context whatsoever, but we do know that this act, even though only briefly mentioned, will cost him a great deal in the future. Scholars have also determined to the cultural context that this was Reuben challenging Jacob's authority as head of the house as the firstborn. It's also believed this had something to do with Jacob's favoring Joseph, which it would make a lot of sense because that pattern would repeat itself. The firstborn being jealous over the younger, and I'm aware this pattern has been broken, but hopefully we will get to that at a later point. And then Isaac dies. The Bible then goes on to lay out the genealogies of Jacob's house. As we've established, that's because Isaac is about to die. Genesis 35, verses 27 to 29. And Jacob came unto Isaac his father to Mamre unto the city of Arba, which is Hebron. But Abraham and Isaac sojourned. And the days of Isaac were 180 years, and Isaac gave up the ghost, and he died, and was gathered unto his people, being old and full of days, and his sons Esau and Jacob buried him. For geographical context, Hebron has played a significant role in this narrative so far, and will continue to do so long after the patriarchs have passed. Hebron is now modern-day Palestine, where Abraham ended up after he parted from Lot. It's where God told him to look out at all the land that should be given to him and his seed, because in the bigger picture it never really was about him, because the blessing was going to surpass him. Sarah died and was buried in that land alongside her husband. Now Isaac is joining them, and down the line Jacob will be buried there too. That phrase, full of days, comes up often in this narrative. It's meant to reflect God's provision and blessing, because Isaac lived a full life. And when he dies, Esau and Jacob bury him, which means it's now their turn to step up and take his place. An order has to be established, which is why Genesis 36 is all about the genealogies of Esau, and then in Genesis 37 we're brought to life of Joseph. And that is where we're going to leave it. Short one, really short, but that was it. Not much to say. So I look forward to seeing you all in the next one. Thank you for watching. I hope you learned something. I hope it gave you something. Not too many crazy revelations in this one, but a short one. I'm glad that these have gotten shorter over time. So thank you for watching. I pray that you were edified. I pray that you learned something. If you liked it, give it a like, share it. If you're new here, subscribe. We're getting back into the swing of things. Discord server will be linked down below if you still care to join and be a part of a body that loves the word just like you. And thank you so much for watching. God bless. I'll see you in the next one. Take care.